I just want to thank everyone for taking the time to be with us today for our CRM-focused session of office hours. For those of you who might not be familiar with us, Zuri Group is a full-service consulting agency that works exclusively with nonprofits, from peer-to-peer fundraising, website redesigns, digital advertising, Google Grants account maintenance, to fundraising strategies, systems assessments and selections, and full-scale CRM implementations, and everything in between. We are passionate about helping nonprofits use technology to build better relationships with their constituents and maximize their impact. My name is Lo, and I'm a digital marketing consultant here at Zuri Group. I also manage our social accounts on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So if you've seen Zuri Group in your timeline on those accounts, that was me. If this is your first visit to office hours, let me just tell you a little bit about it. Every month, our senior strategists and developers set aside some time to talk with you about nonprofit technology and provide an opportunity for you to ask questions. We really want for these to be interactive, conversational sessions. So please use this opportunity to type your questions directly into the chat. I will be monitoring that. I know that sometimes it can be intimidating to speak up, so don't feel like you have to send your message to be viewed to the whole group. You can absolutely send a message to the organizer. That way only I will see it, and I can relay that anonymously for you. As I mentioned, I will be keeping an eye on the chat for questions on technology issues. So however you decide to participate today, we're delighted that you took the time to be with us. Today for office hours, we are going to be talking about CRM. Collectively, we have over 100 years of Blackbaud experience at Zuri Group. Our team has helped organizations leverage Blackbaud technology in roles as developers, solutions architects and consultants, technical consultants, project managers, business analysts, support specialists, and data analysts. So feel really comfortable talking to you and taking your CRM questions today. Our host for this CRM edition of Office Hours was going to be Ken Swift, but he and his wife just welcomed another baby to their family, so we are very happy for them. And in Ken's stead, we're joined by Patrick Shepard, Chris Whisenhunt, and John Auwaerter. Patrick Shepard is the Senior Director of CRM Services, and he's a CRM's integration expert. Prior to joining Zuri Group, Patrick worked at Blackbaud as a solutions architect and was the principal architect and developer on the LO CRM integration. Chris Whisenhunt is a senior developer who is a wizard with all things Infinity SDK. He's also a top contributor on the Blackbaud Developer Network. And John is a leading subject matter expert in infrastructure, application, and database management. He specializes in installation, configuration, and optimization of all Blackbaud software. So even though we will miss Ken, we are in very good hands today for a discussion and Q&A session about CRM. I'll be keeping an eye on the chat, as I mentioned, so please don't be shy. And I will let you guys take it away.
Thanks, Lo. This is John. So I'm going to start off talking just for a few moments about the single sign-on customization that we've developed. The single sign-on customization can integrate with Blackbaud CRM, and it lets you, if your organization already has a single sign-on solution in place, we'll go through a few of the solution providers out there, things like Shibboleth, Okta, OneLogin. But if you've got one of those solutions in place you might be familiar with, you essentially can use one set of credentials to log in to multiple applications. And this is a big help for users. So they only have to remember one username and password. That gets them into multiple systems. Organizations like to use it also because it may add another increased layer of security. Again, not having users writing down usernames and passwords on sticky notes or other things. And it can save time and resources. Again, if you only have one username and password, you're less likely to forget and have to call in and get password resets and things like that. So if you have one of these single sign-on type solutions, we've worked with customers who have implemented Shibboleth, Okta, OneLogin, Centrify, and it's really any other single sign-on SAML solution. So SAML is the security assertion markup language, but it's the underlying technology behind a single sign-on solution. So as long as you have a single sign-on solution that conforms to the SAML protocol, then we can set up Blackbaud CRM to integrate with your single sign-on solution. We've also integrated with third-party providers that do multi-factor authentication like Duo. So you can add a Duo authentication as well, and that also increases another factor of authentication. So you can log in, supply your username and password, and then if you've ever used Duo, you might get a ping on your phone where you actually have to click yes, accept, because you're the person who owns your phone. So it's just another layer of security there. Basically, the structure of it, it's not very different at all to a standard CRM login. Basically, you would just go to your CRM login screen, and instead of providing a set of Blackbaud CRM credentials, you'd be directed to your SAML provider, whether it's Shibboleth or OneLogin. You would just supply those credentials that you likely use throughout your organization for your other applications. And then you're transferred right back into Blackbaud CRM. And if you have your browser, you have a browser open and you've already authenticated to your SAML provider, when you launch Blackbaud CRM, it assumes those credentials and it'll just log you automatically back in. So you can see the little diagram here. It works with full from a laptop or a desktop browser CRM experience, and it also works with the what Blackbaud calls Frog, the fundraiser on the go. So that's the mobilized version for if you're traveling with a mobile device, cell phone or a tablet. So it also works with the fundraiser on the go piece. It basically is just another way of allowing you to log into Blackbaud CRM. Once you're logged in, Blackbaud CRM looks, behaves, functions exactly the same way as it had did before.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
Okay, I think next we were going to talk about our CRM Lumina Online Sync utility, and I think Shep was going to give us a little bit of background on that.
Good. Yeah, I was sitting here cracking up because my cat has been ignoring me all day long, and then as soon as I get on camera, he's walking around and jumps in my lap, and you can probably hear him purring while I'm talking about this stuff. And there he goes. Yeah, so the Lumina Online Sync utilities, I guess how that originated when I was at Blackbaud, as Lo said earlier, I was the main developer and architect on the Lumina Online integration, and there was not a ton of focus on how to handle exception management and how to trace through. Let's say you had a gift that was held up because a constituent hadn't come through the sync yet, but that constituent was waiting on a team, and that team was waiting on its captain. So you had these chains of dependencies that were really difficult to go through, and basically what the only tool that the original sync shipped with was just a list of transactions that had come through. So you had to go through and search through hundreds of thousands of records in the list builder to kind of track down what, where your revenue was if you were missing a gift or missing a registrant or anything like that. So if I remember correctly, I think it was World Wildlife Fund was the first one that we built some of these utilities for. Thank you, Dan. I see you on the list. But yeah, so we built a couple of additional list builders that kind of distilled out the here's my gifts that haven't processed but should have, and here's why, and gave actions to quickly resolve those. So that was kind of one of the original needs. And then we've got other tools that like, for example, there's one that consolidates your 100 constituent batches at the end of the day into 2 batches, one that's got constituents that actually have records waiting on them, and then the other one is just people who may have had some kind of activity in LO but don't actually have a record waiting for them. Yeah, so here's a list of some of the other things. Basically, as we've gone on through the last couple of years building out these tools, it's gone from just something to help manage the existing data that was coming through the sync to actually enhancing what does come through the sync. So for example, for team raiser registrations, you can have discount codes. So you can have a $50 registration, but it's discounted down to 10. And what happens in the core sync is in your enhanced revenue batch, it'll apply to that commitment for the registration, but you're left with an open registration commitment. So we've got a sync that brings over discount codes and fixes, it zeroes out the commitments. We have a sync for team raiser recurring gifts. Another sync that helps with family registrations, or basically multiple registrations that are paid by one transaction. So again, that's one of those things that it may sound small if you haven't had to deal with in the batch, but they're super painful to resolve and figure out why you've got this registration that's only partially applied in your enhanced revenue batch, and can take hours to go and research what exactly happened. So we basically built out a bunch of different utilities that kind of work around the original core LO sync. And we have a much larger deck that shows, what they all are, and the screenshots and everything goes into more detail. So if anybody's interested in seeing that, we'd love to send it to you. Blackbaud Data Warehouse Sync Utility. This is a tool that can be used for Blackbaud hosted clients or organizations that want more access to their Blackbaud Data Warehouse data. So common issue with hosted organizations is Blackbaud they don't provide seamless enough or easy enough access directly to the database. For example, if you're trying to set up a Tableau instance and your data warehouse is hosted with Blackbaud, you may have, I heard a couple of months ago they had a Tableau connector that they were working on, but it wasn't working yet. But the alternative is for the self-hosted folks that have their Blackbaud data warehouse just in a SQL server on the network. You can point Power BI to it, you can point Tableau to it, just basically open up the table browser and pull in a whole bunch of tables into your design surface and start building dashboards. But you can't do that if it's hosted. So this was Ken Swift's idea. He's got a cute story about how it all came about. I think he was traveling somewhere and he called me and said, "Hey, do you think this will work?" And I said, "Sure, we can do that." And I think I wrote the first 2% of code, and he took over at some point when I got busy and just ran with it, and worked with, I believe, Children's Hospital of Colorado partnered with him to kind of work through all the details. But what it is, it's a utility business process that runs in your hosted CRM that will keep track of all of the changes in your warehouse and upload. It'll zip up and encrypt incremental files, upload them to an FTP, and then there's a client piece of it that runs on your network that will download those files and basically hydrate your on-prem Blackbaud data warehouse database. And it's complicated. It's one of those things that sounded so simple in concept, and it has gotten somewhat complicated, but it is actually working really well. And I think that I don't have a client count for that, but I know we've got it running at quite a few different organizations and working well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Shep. I think next on deck, we're going to talk about some of the free downloads that we have on the site. And I think Chris Whisenhunt is going to talk to us about those.
Yeah, thanks, Will. So yeah, we have on our Zuri site, I think if you go up to the CRM services and then there's a more tools link from there. It'll take you into a place where you can enter in your information and get these free downloadable customizations. The first one's the constituent converter, and it will does individual to organization and also organization to individual. We just updated that code a few weeks ago, I believe, and was able to get that. I know originally it did one way and we redid the other way, so that was a pretty useful utility. I know a few clients have used that already. That also takes into account, I think we had some other updates to it dealing with name formats and such. So that was a pretty useful utility that surfaced on the constituent record. I'm going to skip over constituent tiles and let Shep do that one after I do the prospect manager constituent summary view. So this was one that came up for, I believe, Boston College, maybe it wasn't, no, Santa Clara University, that was it. They wanted to be able to, when they go to constituents record, up at the top where it shows the lookup ID in the out-of-box view form, they wanted to be able to see the prospect manager for that constituent if they had one, if they were a prospect. So we did a data form extension on that. I believe we also have a recorded video of doing that L'Oreal and I did. And we took the extension and then built the extension on and used some of the JavaScript the product uses to then inject that into their form to make it look like it's part of the out-of-box solution. So it's a pretty nifty little thing. And that same sort of JavaScript that's used in there is the same JavaScript in theory that we use to help with other extensions and to push things more into product code, and have everything lined up in the right tables and all that stuff to make it look like it's a complete form instead of something that just has the fields put after parent and thrown at the bottom. So Shep, do you want to cover the constituent tiles?
Sure. Yeah. The constituent tiles, I think that was our first free download on the website. I think it was 2 Christmases ago. Ken and some of the other folks said, "Hey, wouldn't it be cool to just do a giveaway of some things that the CRM community may find helpful and interesting?" So we had a couple of developers chip in to build out these tiles, and so we've got a pledges tile that lets you see each one of the open pledges and cycle through them, and of course jump in to the pledge. Basically same thing for recurring gifts. We have a sponsorship tile for child sponsorship organizations or any other organizations that may be using sponsorship for something else. And we've also got a pending interactions tile. And again, they're free for download on the website. They're pretty simple. I mean, you guys know how small a tile is, so you can't fit too much complexity into them. But they're good little helpers to give your employees to put on the constituent page.
Very cool. Thank you so much, Shep. Next, we're going to talk about some of the things that we're currently working on.
Sounds good. I think, Chris, you had Outlook on your list, but I can take that if you don't mind. Yeah, so we're currently working on an Outlook Office 365 plugin that Zuri Group has one of our package solutions is a bio update request batch process, where basically if you're on the constituent page and it's for organizations that want kind of a request approval process for biographical updates, phone number, name, address, all that stuff. They don't want people just directly editing the constituent information. We have a process that puts that stuff into a batch and lets it be reviewed, approved, declined, that kind of stuff. So we're working on an Office plugin that will tie into that for updates, for submitting contact updates through Outlook. It works in basically any browser or the Outlook app, the desktop app. But currently, what it's doing, I guess the current iteration we have, you can submit contact reports, either planned or unplanned contact reports. You can submit contact updates. We are almost done with the part that will sync your pending interactions to your calendar. Not all of them, some of them, it's user controlled, whichever ones you want to actually place on your calendar. It'll do that, and then you can take actions actually in Outlook that will feed data into CRM, and some nice navigation too that lets you jump to a constituent in CRM from Outlook. So it's a cool project that we're kind of knee deep in that right now. Yeah, so we're working on an integration between Blackbaud CRM and Reher. So Reher is I think it's mainly focused on higher ed prospect management, and we're quite a few months into a file-based integration with Reher that lets you push your constituents up to Reher, and then it's I don't know a ton about what they do, but I think it's got some intelligence about how to properly work with your prospect pool and who to work with and how to approach them, and then the work that you do in Reher, you can push back into Blackbaud CRM, and that's all automated via file exchange. So it's quite similar to Evertrue, the Evertrue integration, which is a good segue into what Chris is going to talk about.
Yeah, thanks, Shep. So yeah, the Evertrue integration is something that we started a few months ago, partnering with Evertrue, and I think our first round of integrations is going to be the CRM and Evertrue, and right now we have it so that constituents are exported from CRM and imported over into Evertrue. It's a one-way sync. The interactions are a two-way sync, so you can export interactions from CRM to Evertrue, then you can add interactions in Evertrue and then import them back over into CRM. And we're also working on now the proposal syncs, which is in Evertrue they call it a proposal, and in CRM it's a little more like a prospect plan. So we're working on those to get all that done. I know we have a few people now that are that we have it deployed to, that we're working with some of the bumps along the way, but it's a pretty nifty little solution that's all based on file exchange, kind of like the Reher is as well. Blackbaud just handles the file import and export really well, so it's kind of the thing to go to in the Blackbaud world. So, but for now though, it's working pretty smoothly. If we partner with Evertrue, we've actually been able to. We're working with them now so they can make some adjustments on their side, and we can make some adjustments on our side to help have a much more elegant solution.
Very cool. We do have a question about the Outlook 365, and just wondering when that would be ready, even for getting a demo to fundraisers. Do we have any idea about time frame?
Yeah, we've done a few demos of basically the functionality minus the calendar integration. So I'd love to have that in the next demo we do, which we're hoping will be maybe a couple weeks, something like that. Looking to be feature complete on it within about a month.
Awesome. Jennifer, I can send you an email when we're done, just to connect to you guys so that you can stay in touch and make sure that you have access to that when it's ready. Thank you for the question. We have another question from a participant. It's my understanding that Blackbaud purchased Reher last year. What advantages are you providing above and beyond what they've been working on since procurement?
So I can kind of speak to this, Shep, if you want. I don't know that Blackbaud's actually doing anything with Reher to CRM integration. When I was at BBCon last year, I spoke with Matt, the development or the senior product manager for CRM, and asked them if they're going to be doing an integration with Reher, and he said not at all. It wasn't on the roadmap for the next 18 to 24 months. So from what we've been told, and I can reach back out to them to see if any of that's changed, we've been told that they were not planning to integrate it with CRM at all. So I think we kind of stepped in and decided to take a leap of faith and do it.
Okay, excellent. Well, we have now officially moved into the Q&A segment. We do have some questions that folks submitted through the RSVP form, so we'll go ahead and get started with those. But as we're talking through those questions, please feel free to go ahead and share any questions, issues, concerns, or even feature or enhancement request ideas that you'd like to see so that we can also talk about these. One question that we got through the RSVP form was around memberships reporting regarding constituents' membership status history not displaying in the membership record. Chris, would you be able to tackle that one?
Sure. Yeah. So it sounds like there's is a report now that's actually been done. Let me see. So I think one of the things with that is when it comes down, I guess it's an out-of-box report, or this is going to be, a custom report that's been done. It needs to need to look at it and go over it and kind of see what's missing from it. That's the sort of things a lot of times that the membership stuff, might be pulling from the data warehouse, and the sync may not be updated, or may not have updated when they're running it, expecting specific things in there. It also might be something that's better suited for a list builder or a data list as well from the transactional database if the report's not giving exactly the information they need. But that would be something we probably want to talk with whoever gave that out and whoever asked the question, so we can kind of walk through it and try to see a real-world example of what issues they're having with it, so that we can try to give them the best path forward on it.
Okay. Well, if that was your question and you're here and you'd like to provide some additional information on the call for us to walk through in real time, please feel free to do that. If you prefer to keep it offline, go ahead and keep staying silent, and we will connect with you via email after the webinar. And they said reporting is how they were going to handle that.
Christina, I'd love to talk with you more about that after this. If you have some time, feel free to shoot me an email and get on the phone and chat about it.
Awesome. Okay, we also had a question about how to best use the campaign features for setting up and tracking new comprehensive fundraising campaigns in terms of priorities, sub-priorities, and campaign hierarchy. And we do have a consultant, Kate Nimity, who is amazing. She's actually on site with a client, but we did follow up with her via email to try to get some information around this for you. And so she passed along an answer for me. So Kate recommends starting with the overall campaign and any subdivisions of that campaign, like capital projects, annual giving initiatives, and strategic priorities. And then multiple designations can be associated within a single campaign. Multiple campaigns can be associated with a single destination. And if specific destinations or designations are established for the campaign, this may be enough detail for roll-up reporting. And then within each, you can use priorities to group the sub-priorities for a more granular breakdown of fundraising. For example, within capital projects, you may have a priority of infrastructure and a sub-priority under that of student center renovation. And then revenue transactions can be associated with a campaign sub-priority, and roll-up reporting can be accomplished at the sub-priority, priority, campaign, or overall parent campaign level. So hopefully that helps to give a little bit of information. If you would like to talk with Kate about that further, that's definitely something that we can help arrange for you. So I will reach out to you via email after the webinar to see if that's something that you are interested in. Let's see, here's a question. Do you know if there is any good reason why, once a constituent has an address, you need to have a primary? This is preventing us from end dating a primary address if we don't have a new primary to offer.
So yeah, I think so if you don't have one, a lot of universities then will, I guess you can still keep it marked as primary, but a lot of people then usually push that to like, there's a different type you can use. Let me see, I don't have CRM on this computer, but yeah, I think that'd be a great conversation for afterwards to actually walk through it and try to think through the best practices, help them with that.
And I know this is probably a little more of a technical bent on that question than somebody was looking for, but there's just assumptions made all through CRM that if addresses exist, one of them is going to be primary. So for example, I know for a long time the data warehouse load would break if you had a bunch of addresses but had constituents with addresses but no primary. So it's not sure what the thought process was in designing it that way, but it's very entrenched in the design of the system. So somebody's thinking about, yeah, maybe we can bypass that somehow. I would advise against it.
Okay, we do have one final question from the RSVP forms, and this again is going to be answered by Kate vicariously through me. And there was a question about how to make selections or lists available for non-CRM savvy users. And so Kate was saying that ad hoc query selections can be accessed from the ad hoc query results page. And she recommended creating the query and giving permissions to users for that page so that when they land on that page, they can click to view results, browse to the individual records, and import to Excel, all without needing access to the query builder itself. And then additionally, users can add that page as a shortcut for quick access in the future. These are great questions, guys. Thank you so much for submitting them. We do have some time left, so if there's anything that you are thinking of asking, please don't be shy. This is what we're here for. And guys, is there anything that you guys would like to talk about with regards to CRM and things that you have found that have been really helpful to some of the clients and organizations that you've worked with that maybe people haven't thought of? While you guys are stewing on that, there is a question about whether or not there's a way to search for social media names on constituent records.
Sure. Out of box, there is not. I don't believe that's a field that they give you the ability to search through, but that is something that's pretty simple to customize. Not extending in the idea of data form extensions, but creating a new custom constituent search based off of the constituent search by name or lookup ID search list. Creating a custom version of that and adding social media names in there is a pretty simple task. We customize those search lists a good bit, so that's something we could very easily add in there.
And yeah, I've got some to throw out just on your last question about just general CRM useful things. One thing that just keeps coming up, and we keep seeing this as a real simple solution to performance and query issues, is the latent constituency process. Let me get the exact name of that so everybody knows exactly what I'm talking about. Let's see. Constituency stored value refresh process. So it's under the constituents functional area, and what this does is, I'm sure anybody who's reasonably technical knows that CRM does a lot of calculations, kind of calculating on the fly constituencies. Some of them are stored just in a table, but some of them CRM actually goes and looks up to see if the person meets the criteria at the time of querying for a given constituency. So, we've seen just huge improvements in performance in things like acknowledgement processes and any kind of query, whether it's in a report in SQL or whether it's using the query tool from the front end, building queries that have a process around them. This store value constituency process, you basically set it up and say, hey, for this selection of constituents, go ahead and just calculate these periodically. So it's just like anything you can schedule in CRM. You can schedule it multiple times a day or once a day, but then you use these other nodes in query that don't calculate on the fly, and it can take hours processing down to minutes. And that's something we even tell our report developers, if they're hitting the constituency calculation functions, use the view that's, I think it's called latent. It's constituency _ latent or something like that, because it uses the stored values and can really speed things up. So just off the top of my head, that's the one thing that I've seen it even over the past couple of weeks just come up, that if you're not using it, you probably should be, if you're using constituencies for anything.
Yeah, I use that in the efforts for sync, and that was something that took using the normal view. I think it took 4 hours to run. When we switched to that, switched to the latent view and used that process, and we put that in there, it went down to like 1 minute and 36 seconds or something. So it was substantial.
Yeah, I know a while ago I had traced a performance problem in a query down to the constituency. Like, it was looking at whether somebody qualified as a donor constituency way deep down, 20 levels down in the SQL. It was basically doing like a select star on the revenue view, not even the financial transaction table, but like the old revenue view. This was many service packs ago, but just kind of an example of how if you think about doing a query on 1 million constituents, and each time it's going to run a function that sees if each one of those has made a gift as one of 15 constituency checks, it can make for a really slow query.
Okay, we've got another question. They're wondering if there's a way to add a custom button to the enhanced revenue batch via the SDK. They're wanting to add a way to easily identify a constituent spouse from within the batch.
Identify a constituent what? Oh, a spouse?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. Adding buttons to the batch is relatively simple once you have the code to do it. And if you want to identify the spouse, you could even add that just as an additional, like a read-only column. That's the kind of thing that would be awesome if they let us extend the window at the bottom of the batch, the little information window. I think that's another thing Chris has struggled with, that it looks like you'd be able to do it, but then it ignores it if you try and put an extension into that window. But yeah, we've done things like have a button that pops up a dialogue with a bunch of additional info that people can hit on an individual batch row, or summarize some information in a read-only column in the batch, or all of that stuff is relatively easy, and as long as it's done right, it's not going to cause performance or any batch issues.
Okay, well, I just want to say a huge thank you to Shep, Chris, and John for stepping into hosting duties today, and also to give a big thank you to everyone who took the time out of your day to join us for the CRM office hours session. If you have any questions about what we've talked about today, if you'd like for us to follow up with you on some of the questions that you asked around enhancements, or just more information around some of those processes, please don't hesitate to reach out. Or if you had a question that you didn't quite feel comfortable asking, but you want to go ahead and reach out, you can absolutely email us at innovations@zurigroup.com. We'd love to speak with you. And speaking of email, we do have a mailing list. I will go ahead and pop the link into the chat window so that you can go ahead and subscribe to that if you would like. And otherwise, thank you so much, everyone. We will see you next month for our next office hour session. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.